Snuggle in, get cozy, and open your hearts to this peaceful bedtime story. Tonight we will journey with a young girl named Lacey, who discovers the power of light, truth, and discernment through her adventures in a gentle, sacred land. The story weaves together the truths found in Doctrine and Covenants 49 through 50, including the eternal nature of marriage, the importance of embracing God's truth over tradition, and the Good Shepherd's guidance in helping us discern true spiritual light. Through quiet encounters and divine instruction, Lacey learns how to recognize deception, grow in grace, and embrace the light that groweth brighter and brighter until the perfect day. This calming narrative encourages reflection on the Saviour's loving care, his protection from false doctrine, and his invitation to walk in his light. Once upon a quiet evening, nestled between a glistening brook and a grove of whispering birches, there was a village called Willowmere. It was a village full of laughter and learning, where the elders taught the stories of God, and children ran freely beneath the golden sky. The cottages stood in peaceful rows, their chimneys sending tendrils of smoke into the twilight air. In a little cottage near the edge of the village lived a young girl named Lacey. She had eyes the color of amber honey and hair that caught the sunlight like threads of copper. Lacey was curious, gentle, and full of questions about the world and the whisperings she sometimes heard in her heart. Her mother often said that Lacey had been blessed with a heart that listened, not just to words, but to the spaces between them. Her favorite place to wander was the meadow that stretched just beyond the forest, where the wildflowers swayed and the wind carried the scent of peace. The meadow held colours that seemed to change with each passing hour: morning blues, midday golds, and evening purples that spoke of heaven's nearness. Lacey would often sit among the tall grasses, watching butterflies dance from bloom to bloom, their delicate wings like living stained glass. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned a warm lavender, Lacey sat at the edge of the meadow, watching the fireflies rise. They flickered like stars, fallen to earth, each one carrying a tiny fragment of light that seemed almost holy in its gentle glow. Her grandmother, wise and full of kindness, joined her with a warm smile. Grandmother's face was lined with years of joy and sorrow, each wrinkle telling a story of faith preserved through life's changing seasons. "Lacey," she said softly, "do you know the story of the light beyond the meadow?" Her voice was like warm honey, sweet with wisdom gained through patient living. Lacey shook her head. Her eyes widened with anticipation, for her grandmother's stories were treasures more precious than gold. It's a story of truth, of light, and of the shepherd who leads his sheep, even when the path grows shadowed, Grandmother said. She settled beside Lacey on the soft grass, her weathered hands folding peacefully in her lap. And so, as the stars began to twinkle, Grandmother began the tale. Her words painted pictures in the gathering dusk, bringing distant times and places near. Long ago, in a time of both wonder and confusion, there was a girl much like Lacey. Her days were filled with simple joys, gathering wildflowers, helping her mother bake bread, and listening to the village storyteller spin tales by firelight. Her name was Amara, and she too lived near a forest that bordered a great light-filled meadow. The forest was dense with ancient trees, their branches forming a canopy that filtered sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor. Amara had heard stories of the shepherd, a loving guide who watched over his flock and led them toward truth and joy. The village elders spoke of him with reverence, telling how he knew each sheep by name and would leave the 99 to find even one who was lost. But in Amara's time, voices filled the land. Some called from the marketplace, others from hilltops, and still others from shadowed corners where uncertainty lurked. Some spoke truths, and some spoke nearly truths. Words that sounded right, but left the heart unsettled, like a bird that cannot find its nest. And many hearts were confused. People argued about what was right and what was tradition, what was eternal and what would away like morning mist. One day, Amara heard a voice beyond the trees calling her name. It drifted through the forest like perfume, enticing and mysterious. It was soft, sweet, and strange. Not quite like the voices she knew, yet somehow familiar enough to draw her forward. It promised light, joy, and knowledge if she would only follow. Promises of wisdom and understanding that would set her apart from others in her village. She stepped into the woods, curious but unsure. The path beneath her feet was neither clear nor straight, winding between gnarled roots and moss-covered stones. The shadows there were deep, deeper than she had expected, as though the trees themselves were holding their breath. And as she wandered further, the voice seemed to echo from many directions. First ahead, then behind, then to either side, until she could no longer tell which way would lead her home. Suddenly, a soft glow appeared before her. A lantern held by a man with gentle eyes. His face was kind but solemn, and his robes were simple, the color of dawn. "Are you lost?" he asked kindly. His voice was clear as a mountain stream, washing away the confusion that had gathered in her mind. "I was following the light," Amara replied. She gestured vaguely toward the deeper woods, where flickers of something luminous still danced between distant trees. He smiled and said, "Then follow the true light, the light that comes from God, not from confusion. His eyes held such certainty that Amara felt her fears begin to calm, like waters settling after a storm. He handed her a small scroll. The parchment was soft and warm in her hands, as though it had captured sunlight. It read, "That which is of God is light, and he that receiveth light and continueth in God receiveth more light, and that light groweth brighter and brighter until the perfect day." Amara's heart warmed. The words seemed to glow, not just before her eyes, but within her very soul. She felt peace deep in her spirit, a quietness that was not the absence of sound, but the presence of something holy. "That is how you will know," he whispered. His voice carried on the forest air like the scent of spring after a long winter. Light that comes from God lifts, comforts, and fills you with peace. He touched her shoulder gently, his fingers leaving a trail of warmth, and with that, the man vanished, and the forest lightened just a little. The trees seemed to stand taller, their branches no longer threatening but protective. She returned home, scroll in hand, and told her people of the encounter. Some gathered close, eyes wide with wonder, hungry for the peace she had found. Many believed her. They sensed the truth in her words, recognizing the light that now shone in her eyes. But others clung to the traditions they had known, though they brought no peace. "We have always believed this way," they said, though their faces remained shadowed with doubt. In Willowmere, Lacey looked up at her grandmother. The fireflies continued their dance around them, mirroring the stars that now filled the night sky. "Was the man the Good Shepherd?" she asked. Her voice was hushed with reverence, sensing the sacred nature of the tale. "Yes," her grandmother said. She nodded slowly, her silver hair catching the moonlight like a halo. "The Good Shepherd leads us away from confusion and into safety." Her hands, weathered by years of faithful labor, gently stroked Lacey's hair. Lacey thought about her own world, how sometimes ideas swirled like leaves in the wind, each one calling out as truth. Friends who said one thing, stories that taught another, and her own heart that sometimes wondered which path to follow. "But how can I know which light is real?" she asked. Her eyes searched her grandmother's face, seeking certainty in a world of shifting shadows. Her grandmother gently turned her toward the sky. Above them, the stars shone with unwavering brilliance, each one a testament to divine order and beauty. The Savior teaches us that true light brings understanding, peace, and joy. false light stirs confusion and darkness. Her voice was firm yet tender, like the roots that hold a sapling through storm winds. Then she opened a small book and read softly, "That which doth not edify is not of God, and is darkness." The words settled over the meadow like dew, refreshing and pure. Lacey closed her eyes and let the words rest in her heart. They felt right, true, and eternal, like coming home after a long journey. That night she dreamed of the meadow. The familiar grasses and flowers were there, but somehow more vibrant, more real than she had ever seen them. In her dream, she stood at its edge, and many paths branched out before her. Some were wide and clearly marked, others narrow and nearly hidden among the tall grasses. Each path glittered with a different kind of light. Some were bright and harsh, hurting her eyes when she looked directly at them. Some sparkled and danced, but they felt empty when she stepped toward them, like beautiful lanterns with no flame inside. Others were quiet and steady, glowing with warmth that felt familiar. They reminded her of the feeling she had during morning prayers with her family. Then she heard a voice, deep and kind, calling, "Little one, follow the light that lifts you." It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, filling the meadow with gentle sound. She turned toward the softest glow, steady and calm. It was not the brightest path, nor the widest, but something about it called to her heart. As she walked, the light grew brighter, and she found herself walking beside the shepherd. He wore simple robes, and his face shone with a love that knew her completely. He said nothing at first, only smiled. His presence was enough, a peace that needed no words to explain itself. Then he said, "The truths of my gospel are not confusing. They are light and love." His voice was like music, each word a note in perfect harmony with her soul. Lacey asked, "What if I believed something before that wasn't right?" Her voice was small, afraid of having wandered from the truth without knowing. The shepherd's eyes twinkled gently, not with judgment, but with understanding deeper than the sea. "My little child," he said, "you are growing in grace and truth. That is the path." His hand rested on her shoulder, strong and reassuring. He handed her a flower, simple, white, and pure. Its petals unfurled like pages of a sacred book, each one perfect in its design. On its petals were the words, "You must grow in grace and in the knowledge of the truth." The letters shimmered with golden light, not written on the flower, but somehow part of its very being. Lacey held the flower close. Its fragrance was sweet but subtle, bringing clarity to her mind and heart. Then she woke to the early dawn, the dream lingering like dew on the grass. The first rays of sunlight were just beginning to touch the eastern hills. She stepped outside. The air was cool and fresh, filled with promise. The meadow shimmered. In the morning light, it seemed to hold echoes of her dream, each blade of grass a testament to divine creation. She felt something inside, light, steady, and true. Not an emotion that would fade, but a knowing that would guide her steps. That week, Lacey spoke with her family about what she had felt and learned. Around their wooden table, with candles casting a gentle glow, they shared their own experiences with light and truth. They talked about the truths of God's plan, how every principle fit together like pieces of a beautiful tapestry, none contradicting another. They read together from the scriptures, marriage is ordained of God and is essential to His plan. The words reminded her of her parents' love, a living testament to God's eternal pattern. Her parents shared how their love and their covenants helped them grow together in faith. Her father spoke of patience learned through years of marriage, and her mother of the strength that comes when two hearts are united in purpose. Lacey began to see how every true thing brought light, not just to her, but to those around her. Like ripples in a pond, truth touched all who embraced it. In her learning and teaching, she remembered the shepherd's words. They came to her in quiet moments, guiding her interactions with others. Are you edified together? The question shaped how she spoke with her friends, seeking words that would build rather than break. She smiled, thinking of her school teacher who prayed before lessons and how peaceful the classroom felt. Even difficult subjects seemed clearer when approached with reverence and divine guidance. Then she remembered her younger brother, Theo, who often asked questions during scripture time. She began to answer with gentleness, listening with care, learning as much from him as he did from her. His simple faith often clarified what complex explanations had muddied. One evening, her family knelt in prayer together. The firelight cast long shadows on the wall, but their hearts were filled with light. As they prayed, the room seemed brighter, not from the candles, but from the spirit of peace that filled their hearts. It was as tangible as sunshine, warming them from within. Lacey remembered another verse. He that receiveth the word by the Spirit of truth receiveth it as it is preached by the Spirit of truth, and both are edified and rejoice together. The words explained the feeling she had when truth was shared with love. Her heart swelled. Like bread rising in the oven, her understanding was expanding. She was beginning to understand, not just with her mind, but with her heart and soul. In the days that followed, Lacey walked the meadow path often. The place had become sacred to her, a temple without walls where heaven felt near. Sometimes she brought friends who were unsure of what they believed, young ones with questions in their eyes and doubts in their hearts. She shared her experiences, always gently, always listening, never imposing, but offering truth like sharing bread, sustenance freely given. Sometimes they would sit in silence, watching the clouds drift overhead, the quiet moment itself a kind of testimony. In stillness, many found answers that noise had drowned out. At times, she encountered questions she couldn't answer, puzzles that seemed too complex for her young mind. Fear and confusion were not the shepherd's way. His path was peace, even amidst uncertainty. She knew God was not the author of fear, and so she continued seeking, praying, and learning, trusting that light would come in His time and His way. In a quiet moment near the brook, she opened her scriptures again. The water's gentle song provided accompaniment to the sacred words. This time her eyes fell on, "Behold, verily I say unto you, that which is of God inviteth and enticeth to do good continually." The verse was like a key, unlocking deeper understanding of how to discern truth. She let the words wash over her, like the water beside her feet, cleansing away doubt, bringing clarity to a seeking mind. Later, at the evening fire, her father told a story of a time he had been confused by what he thought was spiritual guidance, only to learn it was not from God. His voice was humble as he shared his experience of learning to recognize true light. "I learned," he said, "that the Spirit will never cause fear, shame, or confusion, only peace and light." His testimony strengthened her own growing conviction. Lacey remembered Doctrine and Covenants 50:15. "Why is it that ye cannot understand and know that he that receiveth the word by the Spirit of truth receiveth it as it is preached by the Spirit of truth?" The circular nature of the verse had once puzzled her, but now made perfect sense. And she realized, truth always brings understanding. It clears the mind rather than clouding it, like sunlight burning away morning fog. The more she sought the truth, the more peaceful her world became. Less frightening, more filled with possibility and divine purpose. The meadow, the people, even the woods beyond grew less mysterious and more welcoming. All creation seemed to testify of order, purpose, and love. In time, she felt confident, not just in what she believed, but in how she lived those beliefs. Her life became a walking testimony, quiet, but unmistakable. She began to reflect light to others. Like the moon does not create light, but reflects the sun's brilliance, she shared what she had received. One cloudy afternoon, a traveller passed through Willowmere. Rain had soaked his cloak, and weariness lined his face. He was tired and troubled, uncertain about the path ahead. His eyes held the look of one who had listened to too many conflicting voices. Lacey gave him warm bread and sat with him by the fire. The simple act of kindness opened a door that words alone could not. She listened more than she spoke. Her silence created space for his questions to find voice. When he asked her how she knew what was true, she handed him a small stone with a single word carved on it: light. She had found it in the meadow and carried it as a reminder of her dream. He looked at her, puzzled. His fingers traced the letters, seeking understanding through touch. She said softly, "Truth feels like light in your soul. If it invites peace, hope, and goodness, it's of God." The simple explanation seemed to reach him where complex theology had failed. He nodded, his eyes softening. Something within him recognized the truth of her words, resonating with his own deepest knowing. As he left the next morning, he turned back and smiled. The clouds had parted, and sunrise painted the world in gold and promise. "You've led me to light," he said. His voice held gratitude deeper than the mere sharing of bread and shelter. Lacey watched him walk toward the sunrise, her heart full. Of all the gifts she could offer, truth had been the greatest. She returned to the meadow once more, grateful for the lessons she had learned. The grass bent gently in the morning breeze, each blade catching the light. She knew that the shepherd walked with her still, though unseen. His presence was as real as the ground beneath her feet, as constant as the stars above. And she knew that his voice, his light, and his peace would always guide her. Through every season, every joy, every challenge that life would bring, always. As you rest tonight, reflect on the moments in your life when you have felt the true light of God, quiet, peaceful, and uplifting. Remember how it settled your heart and clarified your mind. Let go of any confusion or fear. Those are not the companions God sends to walk beside you. Trust that the Good Shepherd walks beside you, even when the path seems dim or uncertain. Seek truth with a gentle heart, not demanding, but patiently receiving what heaven is ready to give. Discern the light that edifies, that builds up rather than tears down, that unites rather than divides. And remember, that which is of God is light, and that light will grow brighter and brighter as you walk faithfully in His ways. like dawn breaking over distant mountains, gradually illuminating every valley and shadow. Sleep peacefully, wrapped in the light of His love. Rest in the certainty that you are known, seen, and treasured by the One who created both the stars and your seeking heart.